Hi there. Welcome to the American Diversity Report podcasts. I'm your host, Deborah Levine, editor of the ADR. And with me today, one of our many innovators and diverse change makers that we interview is somebody very special. Her name is Angela McIver. Angela, thank you so much for joining us. And
Thank you.
let us tell people that after completing your PhD at the University of Pennsylvania, you founded Trapezium Math. I love that name. An after-school enrichment program for elementary age children. And as part of the curriculum, Trapezium launched the Real American Families Project to celebrate the country's diversity, especially the many faces and lifestyles that define the modern American family. That's quite an accomplishment, right, Angela?
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to do all this.
Sure. Thank you for having me, first of all. I am a former middle school math teacher. I left teaching math to run a program for students in Philadelphia's urban high schools called the Math Science Upward Bound program. We focused on low income first generation students. They'd be the first in their families to go to college. And our charge was to prepare them to go to college and major in math and science fields. We would get them as ninth graders and we were housed at Temple University, so they would live on the campus during their summers. We would do after school and Saturday programming during the years, and we were a highly successful program, named a national model. Only 4 in the country out of over 200 programs. We were deemed a national model for the number of students that we maintained and matriculated into college, who we retained in high school and matriculated into college. Where we completely failed was in getting students into math and science majors. We thought we were doing everything we needed to do to give them a leg up and access to these STEM fields, and we failed. And because we were housed at a university, I started taking the classes. I became what's called a participant observer in these college level math classes. I'd take a calculus class for engineering majors or for science majors, what have you. And I really just try to figure out, why do students drop out of these math classes? And what we discovered was that students were failing these math classes not because of what they failed to learn in high school, but because of what they failed to get in elementary school. And I started looking for assessments, professional development, materials that we could use with our kids, and couldn't find anything. And that led me to quit my job and go back to school and study it. So I went back to school, got my PhD. My dissertation looked at the numerical reasoning of urban middle school students. And that set me on my path. What got me to running Trapezium Math, which is for elementary students, is that my children started elementary school, and I began really looking closely at the elementary math curriculum. They are in a very high performing elementary school. And yet, as I looked at their elementary math, I thought, there's no way they're going to be prepared for the most rigorous math courses when they get to middle school and high school. And initially I wanted to change what was happening in the school, but we got a lot of pushback. So I started Trapezium Math out of my house, just for my children and their friends. But within a couple of years, we had a waiting list that was a year and a half long. We had kids in our house every day. My husband would come home from work and there'd be like 20 kids, in our house. And so in 2014, I got a brick and mortar storefront and officially opened Trapezium Math. And that's where we've been since. Our brick and mortar became a casualty of the pandemic. We had to close our doors on July 1st of 2020. There was just no feasible path forward, but we kind of relaunched as an online math club for students. And that's how I got to where I am now.
I love it. By the way, I don't think I've told you, but when I came to this country and I was 8 years old, they put me in an advanced math class in elementary school. Remember the new math?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. And it was difficult to say the least. My father, who had been a military intelligence officer, is the one who helped me through the course. He said
Yeah.
it was like coding.
Wow.
And
Yeah, and the new math, they were doing a lot of working on different bases. Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes, yeah, and but when you're that young, 8 years old, 9 years old, it's just the norm, right?
right,
If
right,
that's what you're learning, and
right.
shapes your brain
Absolutely.
forever. It really did, and I ended up studying um, computer programming
Wow.
in the 1960s.
Wow.
Yeah, actually, my mother made me. She said, "This is the future."
It was, and she was right.
She
What a
was
smart
right.
mother. Yes, absolutely.
But to think that um, you are taking these young people at this age, right, and helping shape their brains so that they can hold this information, process it, right,
Yes.
and make something of it.
Yes.
Just perfect. Thank you. Oh
Oh,
my
thank
goodness.
you.
And it's not easy, I know. I think I can remember the look on my father's face on occasion.
Well, good for your father, though. I think that's, the students who are succeeding in math, we know generally have parents who work with their kids at home, because in elementary school, the math program is not going to give students everything that they need to be successful. So it's unfortunate, because there are so many children who could fly, right? Who
Yes.
could just do so well. And they just don't have access to the kind of instruction and the kind of learning that is needed to be, to do that.
Well, I was very fortunate. I'm sure that a lot of parents are as clueless
Right,
as, I mean, it's not something that unfortunately we have all embraced. Um,
right.
but someone like you, and you saw your own kids needing it, and you went and you spread it out through the neighborhood. Oh, that's wonderful. And I'm so
Yeah.
sorry that COVID has interrupted, but I bet that your online work is pretty substantial.
It absolutely is. And I think, there was a silver lining. I don't ever want to go through something like that again. Right. I said, okay, we're coming out of the devastation that so many small businesses that had dealt with, and a lot of small businesses, including our own, are still trying to get back to our pre-pandemic space. But it there is a silver lining. We had to, in the in our math club, our brick and mortar, if you were to walk into our math club space, it doesn't look like school. There were no tables and chairs.
Oh,
Kids and teachers took their shoes off and put them in the cubby. They sat on the floor. All of our walls were painted whiteboard walls so kids could write on the walls. And one of the things that I am so passionate about is bringing joyful learning to math, right? And it's really, it's easy to bring joyful learning to reading, right? You can put on plays, you can do that. There's so many ways that you can do that. And the math community has not been very creative in bringing that same level of joy in math. And so that's really been my focus.
oh,
But
wonderful.
when when we moved online, we have always been very technology free, in terms of our ethos. And we wanted kids to disconnect from computers. And we know that particularly in math, that's the first place that schools go. That's the first place parents go. They put kids in front of a math program on their computer. And we wanted to take kids away from that. And so then we had to embrace technology, right? Everything goes down, everything was moving online. And I think because of our whole philosophy about learning, we were just uniquely positioned to create an online program that was as technology free as you can get. And we designed a kit that our students get sent. They're sent a kit, and everything that they do is hands-on. This is like, we have this number flipper. This is like one of
I
the
love
things that they use.
it.
We have all of these different like manipulatives and games that kind of transferred fairly easily to an online setting, as long as the kids had this kit. And so that's been really exciting and wonderful for us. And we love that piece.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My goodness. I'll share with you that my husband, right, as a retired design engineer, became a math teacher.
Oh, wow. Yay.
Indeed. And tutor. And he he loves it so much, and he uses it in designing graphics a lot
Yeah.
too, right? He's the kind of guy that falls asleep doing math problems.
Wow.
Some people count sheep, other people do math problems.
Right. That's great.
And it's great fun to watch him always. So tell me a little bit about this curriculum project within 10 Trapezium, the Real American Families. What's it
Yes.
all about?
Yes. So, we are a math program, we do math, but there was, in the past few years, I just became far more anxious and a lot of angst around the conversations that have been happening that, um, were grounded in this very strong anti-immigrant sentiment, very strong anti-disability, these racist conversations that were happening, and I wanted to do something about it, right? And
Yeah.
I, was thinking, we're a math program, but we have real estate on the front of our math books. We sell a lot of our math materials that we could use to kind of help introduce this idea that America is made up of diversity. That's what makes us so wonderful and unusual and different than most other countries in this world, is the fact that there is this diversity that has been embraced. And so we highlighted 3 families that represented this diversity, and I hired a writer to like meet with these families and kind of just do some research and create their stories. And we shared their stories. So we realized the front of the activity book, was perfect real estate. And then the inside cover, we didn't have anything on the inside cover. So we said we could put a story on the inside cover of these books. So our Real American Family started that way. And we started with 3 families. The first family was a Hussein family, who is this young married couple from India originally. They both of the husband and wife were brought here as children, and gained their citizenship, I think before they went to college, and they met and married. And she's a school teacher and he's a physical therapist, and they have a young child. And so it just told their story about coming to America, and shared their religion and shared just who they are. And the idea is that there's so many children in this country, and so many families in this country that grow up in such homogenous communities, right? They don't see people who are different than they are, and they don't interact, and they don't have these conversations. And that's part of what the problem is. And so we thought, hey, parents can buy our connect the dots books to teach math, but they can also read this story. So so we have 3 families: the Hussein family. The second family is the Daniels Jones family, who is an African-American woman and her daughter. She's a single parent, but she's also a paraplegic. She's is living with a disability, and it tells their story. And then the third family is the Laman Metcalf family, who represents the LGBTQIA community. They are a gay couple who have been together for, many, many years, and only recently, in the last 6 years, were able to legally marry in the state of Pennsylvania. They have 2 daughters, and we tell their story. And the idea is just to introduce what we see is what makes America such a wonderful place. And it kind of helped to just deal with my angst and anxiety about the changes that we are seeing happening, and I just felt like I had to do something. So that's the Real American Families Project.
Good for you. I'm delighted to hear that you're blending that with the math so people can understand the humanity of both.
Right.
Um, I was born in Brooklyn, New York, but I grew up in Bermuda, and
Oh, wow.
I came back to this country at age 7, and I was very much a British colonial. And it was
Wow.
not easy. You go from Bermuda to New York, yeah. So, so
I can imagine.
it's beautiful to be able to help people adjust to the changes in culture,
Right.
along with teaching them the skills that they're going to need in the future. I think,
Right.
wow, that's
Right.
amazing. What are your plans going forward as COVID hopefully winds down?
Yeah. Um, well, I absolutely love what I do and creating engaging math for children. One of my biggest goals, is to really help increase the math achievement of typically underperforming um, students, right? So students who look like the kids that I worked with when I was running my Upward Bound program, low income first generation kids, African American, Latina kids, really trying to connect with those. I'm so sorry. I don't know if you hear my dog.
That's all right. It's all right. We just had a
The
little
doorbell rang and
interest.
I was not expecting that. Rocky. I'm so sorry about that. Yeah, so that is my that's really my goal, just to continue to really drive home that our children can perform far better, than we expect. I think collectively Americans have been traumatized by math education. Every time I say I do math, people, I can't do math. I don't do math. Um, and I want to be able to change that.
Well, I agree that maybe our education of math needs to have a little bit of sweetness added to it. What do you recommend? How do we change it so that people don't freak out about it?
Well, we launched something called Dinner Table Math a few years ago. And right when COVID came out, we were in the process of rebranding it because, for me, the idea was this is really fun stuff you could do with your children at the dinner table. And two things that we discovered is that parents don't want to do math with their children. And there was a study that came out that said that parents would rather talk to their children about sex and drugs than to help them with their math homework. That's how much, we have like said we
Really?
don't want to do math. And I see that all the time with parents I contact. So really the goal is not only to build confidence with children in their math, but to build confidence with parents that you actually do know more math than you
I
think you
love
do,
it.
and you can do this. So when COVID hit, we were in the process of like rebranding, and we're like, we need to change the name Dinner Table Math, because the other piece that we found is that parents, especially mothers who have the lion's share of child rearing responsibilities,
Yes.
were just saying dinner table math to a mother was just really cause anxiety, because they would say, I don't even have time to make dinner, I have to get my kids to all of their activities, and now you want me to do math with them. Like we realized that it didn't evoke the kind of like fun
Yes.
activity thing
Right.
that we thought. But then COVID hit and everyone started eating dinner at the dinner table, right? Because you weren't going anywhere. And I was like, well, why don't we just keep this, right? Like now families were not going out, they were hunkering down, they were eating together. And so we kind of held off on renaming our dinner table math. And the goal for parents really would be to give them the guidance and the framework to work with their young children, especially in math, in the same way they do reading, right? It's really natural and normal, and
Yeah.
you understand how you should build reading in your child, and you sit and read with them, and we want them to do the same for math.
So I'll share with you that when my daughter was still in diapers, okay, and didn't even walk that much, I bought a whole set of numbers and letters uh, that were magnets, and I
Okay.
put them at the bottom of the refrigerator
Oh
so
yeah.
she could sit there and play with them, right? It gave me a little space to make dinner,
Yep.
you know, and it was, to her, it was of course the norm. Doesn't everybody?
Right.
Right. And then I would, I would, I would teach her so I could hear her in the crib at night when she was supposed to be going to sleep, going, "One, two,
Yes.
three. Good girl, good girl."
Oh, that's so cute.
She is now a doctor.
Oh, there we go. Yes. It starts very young. That's
Yes,
wonderful.
it does. We had good times, and I'm hoping that the people will think about it as a joy. I love what you're doing.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to add for our audience about your work and what you hope to do and what you hope they'll do?
Oh, thank you. I would love, we really are trying to get the message out for families around you really can have a significant impact on your child's learning, not just for reading and, for math, and would love for them to um, be able to access our materials and everything that we have on our website. We're at trapeziummath.com.
Okay.
And then our Real American Families book is available, and make wonderful holiday gifts, and they're connect the dots. So they're intended for children up to about third grade, because we get to multiples. They're not just connect the dots by ones. We have evens, odds, and the multiples and that kind of thing. But they share stories that I think will bring about some wonderful conversation at the dinner table. I'm still a big fan of getting
I
everyone
love
to the
it.
dinner table.
Absolutely.
We would love to be able to share our Real American Families activity pads with as many families as possible. And we're very proud of that initiative, and would love to do more, but really want to shape the conversation around what it really does mean to be American.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah.
This is wonderful because you are reminding me of things that I did back in the day,
Yeah.
and I probably didn't think that much about it.
Right.
For example, when my kid was just in second grade, I taught her how to play poker.
That's huge.
Yes,
Yes.
how to play poker, and she did her science project on predicting the odds.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah.
And my grandmother had done that for me. So I thought, doesn't everybody? But then when
Yeah.
we saw the science fair and her whole, statistics and lined up in a big, nice poster, and a whole bunch of parents just kind of came and stared at it. They were just stunned that a kid would do something like that,
Wow.
could do it. So I hope everybody that you're listening, your kids are capable of
Absolutely.
so much, and it can be fun for you and for them, and it lasts forever.
It absolutely lasts forever. And speaking of that, what you can do with your kids, the one game that I have realized, I have studied this game so much. I've studied children playing this game, adults playing this game, that has every level of math that you need. And it's just the most wonderful game to build strong math skills, is Monopoly.
Oh, you're kidding.
Monopoly starts at a very basic pre-K kindergarten level of just like rolling the dice and one-to-one correspondence, right? Just counting around. But then it gets just increasingly complex, and children can engage with Monopoly at whatever level they are, right? Once they get really good, they can become the banker, and then you have to calculate all the, utilities. There's
Yes,
a percentage calculator.
yeah.
There's just, it is probably the single best game that encapsulates almost every elementary math skill through fourth grade, right? Through fourth grade math. So if kids do play Monopoly and get really good and do a lot of it, they are just naturally building those math skills. So
Oh, I'm so glad you talked about that.
yeah,
It's really very easy to play Monopoly, to get a Monopoly game, get it
absolutely.
going. It can be the after dinner dessert treat.
Absolutely. There you go. And you can just leave it on the table and pick up, after, it lasts for many days, can last for many days.
Oh, yes, indeed. Oh, my
Yeah.
goodness. What fun. Indeed. That's what this is all about. What
Yes,
fun.
absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of
Thank
this
you.
with me and the ADR audience. Thank you, audience, for tuning in. I bet you're going to go out there and play some Monopoly now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot of fun. Absolutely. Do the Monopoly.
All right.
Or poker.
Yes, indeed. It's
Thank you so
amazing what you
much.
can learn when you're having fun.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Angela, for sharing all of this today. We look
Thank you.
forward to hearing from you maybe in a little bit about how things are developing in your world.
I
All
would
right,
love that. I would love that. Thank you so much for having me.
pleasure.